The moment that we take our story back and we integrate it and we heal it and we really get in alignment with our true, authentic, worthy self, when we do integrate with that, you can manifest anything you want in this world. From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips.
And your host, Jessica Gill.
As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. Jessica here. I am so excited for today's episode. This has been a question we get asked all of the time. How did Lacy launch To Be Magnetic? How did she take this beautiful idea and concept and teaching that was coming through to her and turn it into this super successful brand that is impacting thousands and thousands of people? We are breaking it down. What is Lacy's background and story, some new elements that we haven't heard before, and how did she go on to really launch and bring To Be Magnetic into the world? One of the top things that you guys mentioned that you're manifesting right now is in career and finances. So I think there are elements from her story that you can apply then to your career journey, to your passions, your purpose, and start to get excited or start to allow pings to come through of what potential could be on the other side when you get really authentic about what you want out of your career journey. Enjoy.
And now, a word from our partners.
Not all probiotics are created equal. There are a million different products on the market promising to fix, rebalance, restore, reset your gut microbiome and gut barrier. But how many of them actually do? So many are not grounded in science, and that is why we are such fans of Seed's Daily Symbiotic. They are a 2-in-1 pre and probiotic capsule that actually reaches the gut. They are the most science-backed probiotic on the market. They're a team of experts, some of which who even coined the original term probiotic, are rigorous about their research, testing, and the quality assurance of their product. Probiotics are fragile and sensitive to heat, oxygen, light, moisture, which makes it really hard for them to fully get to the part of the digestive tract that they support the most. That's why Seed created the VitaCap. It's their proprietary capsule and capsule delivery system, which helps get 100% of the probiotic strains to the part of the digestive system that impacts it the most, which is why Seed is such an effective probiotic. And that is why I make sure to take my Seed 2 capsules first thing in the morning with a cup of lemon water to start off my day. It has made such a difference in my digestive health, my gut barrier integrity, my gut immune function, and it's even had an incredible impact on my skin. So if you're looking for a probiotic that actually works, you can use the code TBM for 30% off your first month supply of Seed's Daily Symbiotic. Again, that is code TBM for 30% off your first month supply. You can check out the link in the show notes or go to seed.com/TBM.
All right, on to the episode.
Welcome, Lacy. This was a member and fan favorite request for so long, and everyone is constantly DMing me like, what's this part of Lacy's story? How did Lacy navigate this? Where did she start from here? And so we were like, we need a spot where we can keep everything, the origin story of TBM, how it came to be, and everything about your story and your background too. So welcome. I'm so excited to dive in.
Thank you. I'm excited. Like you said, I guess this is kind of my process episode. So I'm like, let's do it. I hope this is riveting. To me, it's so boring because, it's been my story, but I'm really excited to share this all in one place.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So, like any process, so we have it in one spot. What is your sun, moon, and rising sign?
Yes. So I'm an Aquarius sun, I'm a Capricorn moon, and a Leo rising. And I love also like tuning into my North Node is really strong for me right now, which is a Taurus. And it makes a lot of sense in my life with the animals and the farm and design and beauty and good food and flower, the things that are really lighting me up the most. And so I feel very connected to all parts of my chart. And if I were to say, what TBM is and has become, I think, is so much of a group effort. But I do have to say, when I look at it as a brand, it's very much a Leo rising, Aquarius sun, and Capricorn moon. Like when I look at it, I see all of that so fully, or at least my part in it, at least.
1,000%. And even the Taurus North Node, because there's like a very strong visual aesthetic to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. Okay. And what is your background and upbringing and how it's informed who you are today?
Yeah, this one is so kismet to everything that I think To Be Magnetic is, because it's so interesting that I chose two, I think, very specific parents to come through and a very specific childhood. Like I always say, I'm just white trash in a way, like my mom's side of the family, American Irish, alcoholic dad, really, really religious mom, like super crazy chaos, trauma household. My mom being the youngest of them all and never really had love growing up whatsoever. Like, a very normal thing she says is, I think my mom loved me because she had to, but I don't think she liked me, and that's being like the youngest of five and this chaos. And so never really seen or any of that, but had a lot of psychic gifts that were really shut down because of religion, and then so she was an actress and a model and all these things, and was sort of kicked out of her house at 17, somewhere around there, and had to go live from Eagle Rock is where she grew up to her grandmother's house in Mariposa, California, was kicked out like to get her act together, went up there and met my dad, who grew up in like middle class and well educated, well traveled, and they met each other and got pregnant after a few months of dating at 20.
Wow.
And I always kind of like think of my mom because I'm like, oh, she had never experienced love. So subconsciously to her, she wanted to keep a baby. And so when I look at my spiritual path in that, I just uncovered this with so many healers and psychics and things like that. And it's like these two people were so perfect for me to come through on a Pluto line in order to do this work. It's so clear that they were my perfect vessels. It was my perfect childhood for that. And so growing up, I was in 4 different households in 1 week. It was between my paternal grandparents, my dad's house, my mom's house, and then my paternal aunt and her husband. And so it was really interesting because I did have with my paternal grandparents, who I would say were my like safest caretakers, why I have a shred or had a shred of confidence and self-worth. It makes me emotional thinking about it. Wow. I'm also like so luteal phase. So let's just get through this episode. But I can remember so vividly because I have a 2-year-old now, and I think about everything I've learned from inner child work. And when I think about my grandmother, she would tell me, like, this is a woman who married my grandfather. They got eloped at 18, and he ended up going to an all-boys college. So she didn't have formal education, but she was so smart and so self-educated. And she would say, you can be anything you want to be. You can absolutely be anything you want to be. And I think back on that, well, they show in trauma work, if a kid has just one person who's stable and regulating and sees them and is safe, they have a chance. And I think about that all the time. Like, because of the experiences I was able to go through and undergo in childhood, and having this reflection in my life Because of that stability and that expansion, I was able to move past and create what I have. It's just so huge. You know, if people are thinking of having children, are working through their inner child, are caretakers to other people's children, if you can just be the one person in that child's life, especially from 0 to 3, being the most prominent, and then, of course, until 7, that kid has such a chance. Though I wasn't experiencing any sexual abuse, any physical abuse, anything like that. It was a deep sense of constant on the edge change. The rug's going to be pulled out from under me. And it was just two young parents. But I share all of this because had I have not had all of those different experiences and being raised with those vessels, there's no way this work would exist on a Pluto line. And I say on a Pluto line for anybody who's not super familiar with astrology, because Pluto is that scorpionic energy. It's that transformation. But it's just because my work's not done on this line yet, which is transformation. And when you look at old manifestation rhetoric, a lot of it has nothing to do with transformation. It's a lot of spiritual bypass. And so it was very clear, and we'll get into that, that when my time came, the universe was very, very adamant in pushing me like, nothing is going to happen for you in your life unless you put this work into it, because for whatever reason, I would be a conduit that people would receive it differently than they had in the past, and that it would be very effective and it would be very step by step. And so I really look at the vessel I chose, the line I chose. It is so responsible for the work that people are doing today, like 1,000% responsible.
One thing that people always feel really connected to whenever you share parts of your story is that you're an expert in manifestation, teaching people how to manifest their best lives. And a lot of times in manifestation out there, it's people that may have come from stable or secure backgrounds, upbringings, all the things, and you've gone through the shit. You've felt all the emotion. You've come from a household where your nervous system didn't feel stable. And yet, you have used this work to transform and manifest your absolute dream life, regulate your nervous system, all of the things. And so I think that that presents such hope for anyone out there who identifies with Lacy's story, who has come from a home life that felt unstable, where their nervous system wasn't regulated, they weren't attuned to, the parents with best of intentions maybe just couldn't show up for you or the kid as best they could. And you can still transform all of that to have the life that you desire. It is so, so possible.
Absolutely. And, like, I do recognize my privilege. I'm white. I'm in California. I was raised without a doubt in a family that no matter what, women are, I didn't have to overcome, and still often don't have a lot of work of overcoming sexism. Me in particular, like my story, I grew up with an incredibly outspoken mother and who, worked hard, was a single mom. Same thing with my grandmother, ran the show. My dad even is so empowering of women. So I think of those privileges, even though a lot of my trauma stems from young parents, from a mom who was an alcoholic, full blown by the age of 11 for me, and really navigating that. But I say this and recognize my privilege, but I also want to suggest looking beyond privileges for anybody to really soundboard off of what you just said. If there's anything I know from this work and from the thousands of testimonies we've received from this work, and only what has been written in, regardless of your socioeconomic background, your religious background, your ethnic background, what you think may be your hurdles and what you've experienced and are your hurdles, you can absolutely still manifest the life you want. You can integrate, you can heal. And I say this not to gloss over any of that at all, because it's real and that's what's needing to be processed and worked through. I say that to empower, because the moment that we take our story back and we integrate it and we heal it and we really, really, really get in alignment with our true, authentic, worthy self that we came onto the planet as before we experienced any pain, shame, or programming, when we do integrate with that, you can manifest anything you want in this world. And we have had every single walk of life possible in this community doing this work. And it's absolutely true across the board.
So, so true. And it's interesting too, because as you were sharing the story of your upbringing and childhood, my heart breaks for your inner child
Oh,
not
yeah.
having that piece. But the way that you talk about it and the integration, you can hear how much you've healed and sat with the pain of that, and now are looking at it almost like the bird's eye view, very projector of you, to be like, oh, I understand why these things happen. It doesn't make them okay, but I understand why they happened. And instead of sitting in, poor me, oh my God, this happened, blah, 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 it's like, let me really process all the feelings. And now, what did I learn? What is the wisdom? How did I transform it, like that Scorpio energy? How did I transform it into good, these deep, deep lessons that I have felt on a physical level into something that's evolving, which I think is really powerful.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And it's so interesting because something I've known even as a child, and I think many of us have this. I would be curious to hear if you have, but I've always known that I'm meant to have a big life.
Mm-hmm.
My version of that. I've always known it. And so for me, as a Capricorn moon, too, is really interesting. I always took the road less traveled, meaning if this will be healthier and better, but not taste as well, I'm going to do it. If this will be harder, whatever, but in the long run, it's going to benefit so much more, I'll do that. And so I share that because I feel like my healing process, I'm 38. And by 38, I've checked a lot of boxes that society tells you to check in order to be happy and successful. I've checked, I would say, most of them, at this point. But all of this to say, I think my healing journey has been faster than a lot of people's because I had to be a conduit of this work. So it's just been rapid, like meaning that I hit every rock bottom before the age of 30 possible. Like the doormat in dating absolutely broke, no success, leaving the person who I thought I'd marry and have kids with. Like I've hit all those things. I just feel like I had to do those a little bit faster so that I could, put this work out. But then again, on a second note to that, I do want to say from a place that's still integrating, I think the work is forever. But to what you were saying, even when I say, my mom was an alcoholic by the age of 11 and navigating that through all of high school, through the most important years, her having kids throughout that time and watching them go through their childhoods. And even though I feel these emotions and this rawness, I can still say I had an alcoholic mom. But because I've done so much healing and so much integration, there is no charge behind that. There's none left in terms of like anger or resentment or having it be something that holds up anything in my life aside from pain that still is around it, especially for siblings and especially for her, like how beautiful her life could be and all of those years. So it's really interesting. I guess the point I'm making with that is when you do enough integration and enough healing, and again, this journey will be forever for me because my life does just get better using these tools. The bird's eye view, there isn't that anger left and that resentment left at anything. I have an amazing relationship with both of my parents now, incredible, because my side of the street has been I've been doing so much work on that for the last 10 years and not in the talk therapy way, that's just conscious, like deep, deep subconscious work on this and all of the tools that everybody in this brand uses. Therefore, there's just in that bird's eye view, a tremendous amount of love.
I love that. And I'm thinking too, because this is a question we get a lot when you start doing that inner child work, when you first start being like, okay, I got some internal blocks. I want to maybe start manifesting. They start peeling back those initial layers. There is that period with your parental dynamics or your caregivers of, oh my gosh, there's a lot of pain here. There's anger often. And then there's grief for the child version, and then grief for, like you were saying, for the life that your mom could have lived had she not had those challenges, in the way. And not to say she didn't have a beautiful life and do all the things anyways, but it's almost like as a child, you can oftentimes connect to your parent's soul, and you're like, I see everything, like you deserve it all. Just get out of your own way, And I think that is a very painful feeling. How did you start to pull apart those pieces? Like, how did you, when you'd go into the DI, what did you think about? Like, how did you heal that, or how did you move through that grief process as well, too?
Well, it's interesting because the original version, before Deep Imaginings, before I started recording those, it was always channeled, everything that came through this work. Even when I would learn more about shadow work, from experts and stuff like that, or inner child work, I was already using similar tools on my own. It was very much like coming through me from the universe. And so the very first steps around, what are now Deep Imaginings was sort of this like totally intuitive somatic thing I was doing. And so what I would sit and do is I would basically get into a subconscious state in meditation. And then I would really feel into parts of my body that felt tight or like there was emotion there. And I would just sit and I would feel into that part, and I would let it take me on a journey. What does it want to show me? Go deeper. And it would bring up my inner child, and it would bring up memories. And I would do a version of that book, which is letting go. And I would just feel and feel and feel everything coming out. And during that time, oh my gosh, when I first started doing that, I would get like colds all the time and like sore throats and like really crazy, what they call sort of Kundalini, upgrades. I would have those Kundalini flus or Kundalini colds. And it was just my body like finally releasing on a somatic cellular level, like all of this static and, congestion, and really letting that chi flow and move again. So that was sort of the initial movement into Deep Imaginings. And even before I really understood this process step by step, like I was just getting glimpses from the universe. Around the age of 25, I would get this ping all the time. And I lived on the east side. And I would get this ping where it's like, drive to this one beach in Malibu. That was like my Aquarian driving. I could just think and think and think, go there. And I would lie on the beach and questions would just come to me. And I hadn't done formal therapy or anything like that. And I would start to make the connections. I would be like, wait, this guy that I'm dating right now treats me a lot like, this dynamic I had with one of my cousins who would abandon me in those ways, and I would start to write this all down. And it was like the prelude to what our journal prompts would be and stuff. And I started to make those connections. And at this time I was so deep in spiritual bypass manifestation, which we can kind of get into the genesis of manifestation in general in a minute. But I would be like, oh man, I shouldn't be like thinking through this or writing this because like I'm leaning into my negative feelings. I would have that superstition like, oh shit, this is negative. I'm going to attract more of this. So it's really interesting how all of that stuff sort of just channeled through me. And I didn't have any like formal therapy that was asking those questions. It was literally just God, the universe, giving me glimpses along the way until it all came together.
Did you know that your scalp has a microbiome just like your gut? And if you have an unbalanced scalp microbiome, you will see dull, lifeless hair, and in some cases, hair loss and dandruff. I am definitely someone who struggles with having an oily scalp. I wash my hair and seemingly the next day it is all greased up again and I'm needing to slick it back. That is until I found Acton Acres scalp products that have really changed the game for me. Acton Acre is a line of scalp products that treat common scalp conditions like hair thinning, dandruff, flakes, oily scalp, but also helps your hair grow thick and lustrous. That is one big thing that people have been commenting and asking me on is how much my hair has grown lately, and I truly attribute it to having a really healthy scalp. So it has the nutrients and nourishment it needs to have voluminous growing locks. And their founder, Helen Reevey, is a TBM member. She actually manifested so much of her company through the TBM work. She is a first trichologist-founded scalp care brand that takes a holistic approach to scalp and hair care. Because as we know, we have to get to the root of anything if we really want to see change. And for hair, that is getting to the root of the scalp. If you check out the link in the show notes or go to their website, you can take a quiz and figure out exactly what products are best for your unique hair type. For me, right now, I am absolutely loving the Vitamin E Scalp Detox Oil. I put that on pre-shower about 20 minutes before I go in to help break down any of the buildup that's in my scalp from products, dandruff, dust, anything in the environment. It really helps break up anything that may be clogging your scalp and your hair follicles. And then the other one I love, especially for oily scalp, if you are someone that wakes up the next day and your scalp is oily after you just washed it, their Scalp Renew, which is their BHA salicylic acid scalp exfoliator. I use that once, maybe twice a week. Put it on maybe 20 minutes before the shower and then wash it out when I do my regular routine. And it makes such a difference. I do not have oily hair the next day. It helps any itch, irritation, my oil levels, all of that. It is absolutely fantastic. So if you'd like to see how you can up your hair care routine and quality with these scalp care products, go to the link in the show notes or check out actiniquer.com, and you can use the code TBM20 to get 20% off any of your purchases through Actiniquer. Again, that's code TBM20, all caps, at checkout. Okay, so how did you go from this upbringing where you weren't getting your needs met, the rug was getting pulled out from under you, nervous system is in chaos, all the things, to being out on your own? What was that first chapter out on your own? And what did you think you wanted at the time, which eventually transformed into something else?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I moved out at the age of 17. It was like late 16, early 17. My boyfriend, he had already graduated high school and we got our own house together. I was living in Modesto, California at the time. And I had all of these moments in my life that I would be like, that's like meant to be more of my life. So what I'm getting to with that is I saw fresh lavender hanging for the very first time and felt so connected. I was like, why don't we have that around, and rather than going to like the body shop. And then I remember being like so into organic produce, but couldn't get it anywhere, but I just knew it was good. And I remember when I was in 7th grade going to see Practical Magic for the first time when it was in theaters. I remember leaving that and being like, that's me. And I didn't have access to anything like that. I will say, growing up, my mom has always had so many more gifts than I do. She's a medium. She has all the clairvoyant, clairaudient, sentient, the whole thing. Dreams are always premonitions. So I was raised around that. Like I remember her with her girlfriend, and they would have tarot cards and Ouija boards and stuff. So that was always around. And my grandmother, same thing, who, on my paternal side, the same one I was talking about earlier, they had a house in Santa Cruz. So she got very into like the healing arts and mysticism. And she would have friends come over and she would channel to where her whole face would change and stuff. So I was very much, I came through the vessels that were very important to come through, but we didn't have access to the things that I was craving. And so I share that because I moved out at 17. I was going to go to junior college to become a nurse, because that was the safe Capricorn thing to do. Yeah. My mom is a paramedic in that industry, went for half a semester to college because I would have to pay for college on my own. And I was like, I don't even really know what I want to do. And at that time, because my mom had been a model and an actress, there was that level of like, oh, I want to be loved and make her love me. It's very subconscious. So we sent out for an agent in LA and I got one, a commercial agent. And so I started to go, my cousins were at Westwood going to college, at UCLA. So I got the full college experience, just staying with them all the time at UCLA, like the fun parts of college.
Yeah.
He was in like a frat and stuff. And so I would come down all the time for auditions, and I booked a couple of national commercials and they paid well. And it was like, oh, well, I'm going to move to LA and go do this. This seems great. And so when I got down here, I booked those, and then not much happened for a while after that. And I like got into acting school, did all of the things. And so later that year, my mom, who always had a psychic that she worked with growing up, you know, I said, that's what I want for Christmas, is a session with her. She recommended this book, which I won't share because it'll just take you in all of the wrong places. But she said, if you get this book and follow it to a T, you'll manifest everything you want in life. And the book, though I had never even heard of manifestation, the book was very much about manifestation, old superstition types of manifestation. And again, like the Capricorn in me was like, I'm going to master this. I'm going to follow it to a T. And that led to The Secret and the law of attraction and all of the things. And so from the age of 17 to 25, I was the most closeted, practicing, crazy manifestation person, like knew everything and was doing the Hicks. I was like always like trying to get into the frequency, but my level of consciousness was so low. I didn't even know what that meant. Like how people kind of probably ask us when they're like, but in the DI, what exactly are you doing? In my mind, I was like, but how do I know when I'm totally in the frequency? It was just, you know, I didn't have that level of consciousness. And so that led me into that. And it was really divine. Again, like coming through my parents, I very much had to get that agent, have those commercials in order to come here to then discover this world of manifestation that didn't work. That was an extremely important part of this process, that I needed to go through that many years of like the mud and the muck of what doesn't work in manifestation. I really believe that, because when I did finally figure out this formula and put it out into the world so organically, I remember the biggest feedback was like, wait, I can feel my feelings. I can have, like, people were so refreshed. You know, they were like, finally, I can just be real. Like I can get real. And so at 25, I had been like a real doormat in dating for 2 years. I was working at the Laugh Factory on Sunset, which was like the most toxic place to work for on the planet. I mean, so fucking toxic. I don't know if Jamie, the owner, still owns it, but it was horrific. Sometimes I would only make like $300-$400 a week, was living on that, had $30 at times for groceries to have in order after I covered my bills. And there was a point after being a doormat for 2 years in dating, like doing all of the wrong stuff, I started to realize that anytime I really said no and stepped into my worth, that I would actually start to manifest things. Simultaneously, these what are considered now channelings, I didn't know what was happening. I was having those moments of like going to the beach and having these questions come through me from God and the universe. And then I was also like starting to discover, wait a second, also before I say no, I'm often tested for something, you know, before manifestation comes through. All of this really super sped into the same year. I would say it was like from 24 to 25, where it all sort of started getting clear. And I was like, oh, this must just be the way I manifest. This must be my pattern of doing this. So like in Practical Magic, she makes that list. For the first time, I was like working with lists instead of vision boards. I'd done so many vision boards.
Did you do the one eye blue, one eye green?
Yeah. Well, this is what was so crazy when my ex-partner came through. It had said long blonde surfer hair, photographer, European family. I mean, it was so crazy. So he came through, and then that apartment I always talk about, many people will hear in old examples in Echo Park, this apartment in the hills of Echo Park, I manifested, and it was only $325 a month. And when those two things came through, the channeling of how to start basically becoming my own therapist, I hadn't had formal therapy because I couldn't afford anything like that. And so these like downloads were coming through at the same time. I was noticing what tests were. I was noticing when I stepped into my worth, the things would come through. So I would say right around that 24 to 25, it became clear. And I let go of all of the old superstition, all of it. I was like, I'm taking away anything I've ever learned on manifestation. I'm just going to do this. And so by the age of 27, I left waitressing and I did a year as a preschool teacher at my ex's mom's school. And that was even more toxic. After that, I said, okay, I'm going to really, for the first time consciously, put this manifestation practice in motion and see if it totally works. There was a piece of me that my trust muscle was like 90%. that all would go well. And I said, I'm going to jump off this cliff and leave this job, even though my mom's like, you have full benefits. What are you talking about? Like, you're making more than you've ever made. Like, things are stable. And everyone's like, don't leave that, And I was like, I'm going to jump off this cliff. And that's what I called it to myself. And I'm going to leave this and I'm never going to have a job again. I do not recommend this for a new time listener. We have a very specific way that we have someone jump off these cliffs financially within the model of manifestation that we teach. But I did. And that's when I started my blog the very next week, which was a holistic living blog. And I was really using this manifestation process behind the scenes. And it became so crystallized during that time, so accurate, that it worked for me over and over and over again. And it was so completely different than all of the old manifestation things I had learned about. But for me, it was just my process. So I just thought, oh my God, this is my magic. This is my gift. Like, I've got this figured out for myself. Okay, this is great. And so as the universe does, there was a point through my blog that I became a holistic chef. And I was chefing for the heads of one studio network, an actress, and one other person. And they all went away for the holidays. And I had just jumped off the cliff and left my partner of 5 years. This was at 30. He didn't want to have children or get married. And I went, fuck, I'm 30 and I'm about to leave what would still be a fine relationship. His family are like family to me, but I'm going to do this just like I did with that job. This was at 30. 6 weeks later, I manifested Max. And it was like to the T, following this exact process, the exact list, everything that people do today and how to manifest. I did that. And that's when I manifested Max. And I was like, holy fucking shit. Like, this is so real and this works so well. And in that time, like between the time where I was private chefing and stuff like that, friends would be like, wait, you're always talking about this thing. Also, a couple of clients, they're like, teach me. And I was like, I don't know if it works for other people. Like, this is just what I do. And I started to teach them and they would manifest. And I was like, oh, wow, this really works for other people. Again, it was just my like secret little thing. Right at that time that I had left my partner, I had just manifested Max. It was December. And I didn't have any money, had to borrow money from my mom for the very first time ever, her credit card. And I kept sitting in meditation and the universe said, you will not have money in your life. You will never have any form of success unless you put this type of manifestation into the world. You have to do this. And I had that hero's journey thing. I went, oh, fuck no, I'm not doing that. Are you kidding? I come from like the country by Yosemite where everyone would definitely think I'm fucking nuts. I'm like,
LA, look what she's doing now. Like,
oh my God. I was like, it's one thing to make recipes and talk about adaptogens when nobody else is talking about them and like beeswax candles. It's another to fucking talk about this. And so I had so much shadow. And then I was so broke. And that's like always been my Achilles heel motivation because of the way that I was raised, for me is security, financial security. And I was just newly dating Max. It was just like a few weeks in and I remember we sat down one night and I was like, would you think I'm crazy if I started to teach about this thing? And he was like, no, that's awesome. You absolutely should do. Like, he was so supportive. And I was like, okay, if this person can be supportive of me and think that's okay, I can do this. I remember that he was like a vision holder. And so literally, I don't remember, we'd have to look, at the site, but I put out my very first post. It was probably December 15th. And by January, I just started writing articles. I can't remember, but the first ones were like, I'm going to talk about manifestation. Here's what a test is. Like, I just started talking about the steps of, and just like, I really started to teach on the superstitions you can let go and the steps that we have and how to manifest. And I ran a little special that late December. By January, my books were starting to get full. By the end of that year, I was booked out for 3 years in advance. I started to get pressed right away. And it just went to show, when you listen and you're in your dharma for what you're supposed to do, not what your ego is wanting you to do. Because at the time, my ego very much still thought I was supposed to be a famous actress, which is so not in alignment. When you're that, the support's behind you. And so that was the process.
Okay. So I have so many questions going back. So I'm thinking timeline and mindset, because I think this in between phase, the phase between you coming out to LA, working at the Laugh Factory, trying to make it as an actress, to growing the blog, to going into manifestation, and then that taking off. Let's get into that little structure for a second, because I think that is the phase that a lot of people are in, and that's when they're like, I don't know what the thing is. So when you started blogging, what was your intention and goal there? Like, did you want to become a full-time blogger and have that make money instead of acting? Or did you want to have that support you while you're going after acting? Like, what was your mindset on that?
Yeah, so the starting the blog was just totally an outlet. Blogs were really big at the time, and I would go and try to tune in to, I was very into raw food at the time and all that. Like I had done all of the things, vegan, raw foodist, all the stuff. And when I would go to all of these different blogs, they were, for lack of a better word, they were just really cheesy, like the design and stuff. And I was so design focused that I was like, you know what? I couldn't find a blog out there that was just simple and pretty, that was giving this information that wasn't just about recipes. It was about everything in lifestyle. And I had curated that. So when I launched that, I actually didn't have any pressure or thought on that to become my career at all whatsoever. I was going to school to become an herbalist. And I was, in my mind, I was like, oh, I have to be some sort of practitioner. Do I become an acupuncturist? Like I was trying to figure out what that road would be, but it was never like, oh, I'm going to be a blogger that monetizes. I didn't even know people made money off of blogs until small brands would start to reach out to me to say, can I pay you to post about us? I was like, wait, that's a thing? This is awesome. Like, okay, yeah, I already used your product and I love this 100%. You can pay me to talk about this. So the blog was never a motivation. It just sort of happened. And so when I left that teaching job, I had paid off all of my debt while I was there. And I had $4,000 in savings. And then I was getting unemployment for so many months. And also my boyfriend at the time was paying for, and we were living in my like $325 a month apart. Like we didn't have any money, but he was paying for excess of things, you know, because he was a freelance graphic designer and artist. So we were just broke and, you know, figuring it out. And so again, I went to herbalism school. I was figuring out like, I went to go visit the acupuncture schools in town and all of that. And I was like, I don't want to sit in some office all day. I did give herbal support, but it wasn't rewarding for me because people didn't follow through with the protocols all the way and I couldn't see results. And I am obsessed with seeing results. Like to me as a projector, I really want to see when you do something fast and quick, you see something out of it. And so I got over that very quickly. And then I was making money off the blog at that point. I was getting sponsorships, I was having affiliate stuff, and it was very minimal. And that's when I started to do holistic chefing. It was so new. And so that's how I became a chef, again, to pay the bills. Like that wasn't my dream. And that's when the manifestation stuff came through. There wasn't a moment that I was also like, okay, I'm going to go do this manifestation thing and it's going to, you know, be the end all be all. I was just like listening to the universe because I had to.
So that I think is so important because so many people when they think of your story, and even when I looked at it, when I was transitioning careers or whatever, I was like, oh, she launched this blog and like immediately it had all this press and people were interested and the manifestation stuff came so quickly. But for a lot of people, that doesn't happen. And part of the reason I think it happened so fast and you were able to get that following, especially from the blog to start with, because I think that had the foundation of people that could connect with you, is that you weren't leaning on it to be something. You weren't like, oh, this has to like show all of my creative expression, or this has to be my portal for income, or this has to be my full-time job, or this has to be my identity. There was nothing about that. You were just like, I really just love it. It's part of my authentic code. These are the things that light me up. I'm just going to do this because I see a space in the market, but it's kind of mostly for fun. And then if something comes of it, fantastic. That mindset's so key.
That's so big because now obviously like being in the blog spaces and Instagram spaces for so long, we see this stuff a lot in this world. Some come to mind. I don't follow any of these people, but I know that can be tantalizing for people. You know, you see like the woman who started the thing and then has the 300,000 followers to 1 million followers. And I think I've always been really different than that because even to this day, you know, like having a personal Instagram now that's a little bit more active, I don't share on it with any intention whatsoever to receive anything from it. I'm always authentic. There's nothing there that I'm like pushing out and generating income. It's never been the way that I operate. And I think that that has been probably really refreshing to people, because when they do get invited into my world or whatever I want to teach, it's very real. And I think in this world, in the digital space, all of that feels really hard. So yeah, even though I am successful and I have manifested everything that I want and I do truly have that ease, it's all really authentic. All of it. Everything's very authentic. And I wouldn't want it to be any other way. I think a lot of people like see these things and they're like, okay, I'm going to start this thing to have all this that this like influencer and it's like, maybe that's someone's path for real, for sure. But it doesn't start that way. It definitely doesn't start that way with that mindset.
That is such a key factor, is that people look at people who have been successful in the online digital space and like, okay, I have to do exactly what they're doing. And the key is not to do what they're doing. It's to do what you love, genuine, authentically, in your own way, in your own version, without that pressure on it. And I guess too, thinking your mindset around acting was probably more similar
It was
to
that.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. That's when you know you're an ego. 100%. Even though I was fucking working my ass off at acting classes, all my time was being spent doing scene work. I was doing the hard work, but I wanted it to be famous and rich. I wanted it for those reasons. In the space, I never wanted this stuff for that ever.
Did you separate it from acting, or did you have that? Because I think a lot of people are going through that now, that they realize the career path or the path that they're on was for validation, for acceptance, for love, for praise, etc. And they're like, that still might be the thing, but it's connected. Did you have a point where you're like, oh my gosh, it's not about acting at all. What I actually love is this? Or did you have a moment where you were able to separate the need for validation from acting and then pursue it in that direction?
Yeah, I think once I started doing this work, like really starting to do what were the earlier journal prompts and the earlier DIs, I guess the best way to put it is I started to heal and integrate that the things that desired that stuff, I wasn't desiring them in this space. And then I think the second most important thing was that when I launched the manifestation stuff here, though people following my blog were receptive, people in my life were like, what in the fuck are you talking about? So it was like a lot I had to work through and get confident in and be like, you know what? If somebody doesn't get this, whatever, it's helping people. So whatever.
Did some of those people drop off?
Yes. This has been like a wound throughout my whole life. I think it's kind of more of a witch wound where I've had that women are jealous of me for their own projections. My entire life, I've had that always, always, always. And I've done a lot of work around it because I definitely had an aunt and a cousin that I had this wounding around. But I think it's sort of a past life witch wound a little bit, that I'll have women that are really triggered by me, very, very triggered by me, even though like I'm kind of like a golden retriever in a lot of ways. Like I'm nice to most everyone. I'll let most everyone in pretty quickly if I'm liking them and engaged with them. And then like they just really desire what I have. So their intentions are actually not great. And so I recognize that pretty quickly. And it certainly doesn't get me down. And it's like, to me, I'm like, oh, they're working through their process. I've been through this a million times since I've been a kid. This is, I can just watch this. I would say those have been my growing pains, people in my community, and then them really coming back around full circle and just being kind and really seeing my goodness, along the way. So yeah, whenever that's kind of come up or happened, I've always been like, okay, here we go again. Let them go do their process and I'll see you around on the other side of that.
It's so interesting too, because a lot of people in the community, as they become more integrated, those friends, they're shadow rears, they become unaligned and then friendships drop off. But it's interesting to hear that those friendships, they also must have been doing their own evolution and internal work for them to come back around again too.
Absolutely. So I think the more integrated you become in this work, when people's shadows rear, it's so clear what's going on and it's so obvious that someone's in their process.
Yeah, I think that's another piece we get too, is like people feeling so uncomfortable to be seen and to put themselves out there. I've gone on my own journey with this, being afraid of comments or whatever, like morphing myself to be like, okay, let's be the version in which no one can attack.
Yeah, I've been there.
That never, ever works.
Yeah, ever, ever, ever.
What advice would you have for people? You know, you are so confident. I mean, partially your Leo is just shining, you know?
Totally.
How do you, I guess maybe this could be interesting. Describe the sensation it feels like to be seen and be yourself. Because I think people are so disconnected from being seen and there's like tension to this is what it feels like to be seen and just be yourself.
Oh, I feel like that comes with, unless you were raised in a very specific way, very confident and regulated, supported in alignment way, I think that comes with like years of work. It really just does. Like, I think for me, I've had to go through so much work to feel that. I think getting closer to 40 is helping a lot. I believe in diversification so much in life. Everything is diversified in my life. My friendships are, my finances are, my relationship is, in a way, in the sense that my being does not rely on if I'm with Max or not. So that gives a huge level of freedom. Nothing inside myself is dependent on security or validation of something outside of me. I've said that, like, if TBM crumbles tomorrow, I'm financially fine. If a friend breaks up with me, I don't have all of my worth in that friendship. Okay, move it. You know, if Max and I don't work out, like, you know, and so I think there's a long road of diversification as well as healing that gets somebody to that place where they really just truly can really authentically shine and be themselves without it crushing them when somebody is triggered by it or their shadow. What it feels like when I am in that space on a sensation level, it feels really good. Like, it feels heart open. It feels flowy and happy and no strings attached, just doing something because you're doing, you know, that's how it feels when I am sharing so openly and authentically. Those are the sensations going on and not caring what the outcome is.
It's having your magnetic self in the driver's seat when you're sharing versus your fear or trauma or wanting to be seen or anything like that taking over.
There's so many people out there settling for unfulfilling relationships, or people who are stuck in toxic jobs, living in places and spaces that don't inspire them, and especially people who feel like they'll never be able to afford the things and the life that they truly desire. How do I know that? Because it was me before I discovered that manifestation is actually a totally viable, scientifically proven method of creating the life you want. I'm Lacy, I'm the founder of To Be Magnetic, and if you're not familiar with us, we at TBM offer workshops that teach you how to manifest literally everything, from love to money to career to beyond. Our courses are the most effective manifestation method on the market, and that's because of a secret that I discovered years ago about manifestation, which is you do not manifest from your thoughts. You manifest from your subconscious beliefs. So after decades of client research and input from leading doctors and therapists, we designed courses that help you rewire your subconscious mind to align with what you want to manifest. And the best part of all, for any skeptic out there, our work is completely scientifically proven to work. Just ask the tens of thousands of members inside our Pathway membership, which gives you unlimited access to all of our workshops, tools, and offerings that you'll use over the course of a year. This includes workshops on inner child, shadow, boundaries, love, money, the infamous ruts, and the horrible rock bottoms, and so much more. Use our special code EXPANDED, all caps EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first TBM purchase. Again, that's all caps EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode.
So So you jumped off the cliff to launch this manifestation stuff. It launched, it sounds like out of a rock bottom.
Yeah, 100%.
Finances dried up. You were getting tested. Universe is like, you literally will not make any money successfully the way that you want if you don't put this out. Once you made that jump, how was the up level?
You know what? It came out of a magic dark, if I'm really honest, because I had just manifested Max. My life was up leveling so quickly from that. Jumped off the cliff, left my ex, who I had been like, not to his detriment at all, but settling. He had told me at 27 he didn't want to have kids. And every time I broached it, he's like, I'm going to come around. I will. And I knew he wouldn't. You know what I mean? So for 3 years, I was in that, like, just, okay, he's got, so truly, like, I had jumped off that cliff. I had also 2 years prior jumped off of the cliff of leaving the job, but had just jumped off of the cliff 6 weeks before. People are always like, that's a really fast time to move on to somebody else. But he had been in Paris for 6 months, really aiding one of his grandparents that was passing. So we had a lot of space apart, and I had a lot of time to really grieve, like, wow, this person's never going to be able to meet me. And also, I'm not right for him. Like, I had a lot of time to get there. So it wasn't that crazy, the 6 weeks of meeting Max. But anyways, I had just left him. 6 weeks later, I met Max also during the week before our first date. Barley and I, my dog, we were walking in Elysian Park and a pit bull attacked her and bit me. I had to go get stitches. I didn't have any insurance. So it was really, I think it was a magic dark that was happening where the universe, I had been asking for, I want to have kids. I want to get married. I want to have this big life if I do it, because I had been expanded when I was a preschool teacher in Santa Monica. Universe, if I'm meant to be a mom, I want to have the ease that these women have that I see in this school. They have a level of resources and ease, and that they can provide this easeful life for their children. So I'd been expanded in that and asking for it, So when I launched this, I think this more of what was happening in that energetic was I had just manifested Max, and the universe was like, do you really want this life you've been asking for that's bigger? Do you really want this? And I was getting all of the big tests, like the barley thing and the resources drying up. And then the universe clearly communicated the ping. If you want this, follow this. And I went, holy shit, okay, I'm going to do it. And I stepped up. I jumped off that cliff. That was a huge fear to step through. And I started educating on it and doing this. Got the ping, followed it, and the wave came in so strong. All the abundance, all of the movement, all of the stuff.
It's so funny too, because now I'm thinking of even my trajectory to TBM. It was magic dark, but also the ping for me at that time was because I was moving from film and television into wellness and kind of bridging the gap between the two. I had 2 opportunities. One, do something with TBM and podcasting and something there, or I was writing a spec script for a Practical Magic spin-off show that was going to be on HBO.
Wow.
And I was like, which one do I need to pursue more? What is it, universe? Tell me. And it was like, diversify, pursue both, and whatever feels right, you will know. And I was like, okay. And then there was like the podcasting role at TBM. And I was like, oh my God,
Wow.
This feels right. This is it. But it was the Practical and Magic piece.
I feel like there's probably a deep resonance of many people who will listen to this episode about Practical Magic, because that might sound really crazy, but I don't talk about this a lot, but I've certainly really gotten into this, back into working magic again and really working with elements and doing that kind of work. And I would 100% say I'm a witch. And I think many people are inside and identify with it. So when that movie hit, if you're living in a rural area or, like I was in some Central Valley town and a rural area, and you see that, you're like, what the fuck? Like that, it hit me on a soul level when I saw that. I was like, this is everything inside me, everything I believe, and you don't have access to anything like that in any realm. You weren't raised around that in any way. Like I've been practicing Wicca holidays for the last so many years of my life. Like those are the things that resonate with me a lot. So even though it's kind of funny, the Practical Magic thing, I would say that for people who didn't have access to anything like that, that resonates so deeply on a soul level from probably many past lives, of practicing that way and living that way in harmony with nature and the elements and earth. There's probably a lot of people who will be listening to this podcast and be like, me too, with practical magic, for sure.
It's a reawakening to something deeper that I think is within a lot of us, of all of those traditions, of the ancient wisdoms that's been on the planet forever and ever and ever that we've hidden. That could be a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Okay. And then manifestations out, the chapter between it launching and also for people who are like starting their smaller businesses, how did you start to attract in the pieces of the puzzle you needed to continue to scale the company? Because I think that's something that people are like, I don't know how to do the books. I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
What kind of website do I need? Taxes? Like, they have no idea how to get that rolling.
They all found me. It was so in flow again. I was doing the blog, and again, like, I didn't know you were supposed to have a separate bank account for these sponsorships and stuff. And this guy who was a friend in my friend group, he was like, I'm looking to just mentor a few people. He had been one of the founders of Spirit Hoods. And he's like, you need to have a separate business account. Wait, do you have an accountant? So he started to teach me about stuff like that. So with the manifestation stuff, I was just putting out blog posts and educating on it. And I had books open to start. If anybody wanted to work with me, they started to fill up right away. And that was December of 2015. And then by the end of 2016, I had been doing everything on my own. I had Squarespace was how I was doing it. I was working 14 hours a day because not only was I working with clients, but I was taking all of the photos and putting out blog posts like 5 times a week. It was just like a whole thing. And then in that whole year between 2015 to 2016 of December, I was going to like New York and hosting workshops of teaching literally how to manifest. It was like I had typed out all of the blog posts and I was printing them in these little booklets with all these grammatical errors. And I would have these workshops in Los Angeles, in New York, like anywhere that I was traveling. And it would be a room full of people. And I was teaching them essentially how to manifest. People because of the blog, and I would be talking about it on Instagram, they would be like, can you please create a digital version so that we can do this too and learn this too? Because I didn't have any workshops. And so a friend in New York said, my friend who used to work with Garance Duray and these other people, she can help you. And so I brought her on. She was the very first contractor, and she put together a team to help me film How to Manifest. We launched it December of 2016. Also that same December. So when it launched and went live, I was in Scotland at the time, which was like so crazy because I had such a soul experience being in Scotland. I was like, I'm not supposed to leave here. I'm supposed to live here. And then I remember looking at my bank account and I made $200,000. And I went, how in the fuck is this possible? I remember looking at that and going like, wow. And we literally hired, I was like, one thing I told her, I was like, I'm not somebody who, as you guys know so well in the brand, I'm not a babysitter. I'm not a manager. I do not have those skill sets. I'm not here for that. Those aren't my gifts. My gifts are what I teach, how I'm teaching it, and to share, be a person of like the Leo rising, like be in front of people. And so when I brought her on, the one who helped me with How to Manifest, I was like, can you also help me start to hire support? Like I'm working 14 hours a day and I'm like, what, I don't even know. I need help basically. And so she helped me hire Lila. Lila was the very first hire. And then we started to just go from there. Like, what do we need? And then the next hire was this woman, Becky. Were you around when Becky? No, Becky wasn't here still.
I don't think so. Or I think Becky might have been leaving when I started.
Yeah. She was doing like all admin, personal assisting, helping with all of my clients and stuff like that. And then we were like, because I was I have no graphic design experience, but I was trying to make the deep imaginings and like the covers of the workshops. I was like doing these odd shapes inside of InDesign, like the limited skill set I could do. And we were like, we need a graphic designer. And we put out for an intern, and Grace applied to that. So it was like, that's how it all started. But basically everybody found us, like that people would find me. So it wasn't, and she supported in that. And then of course, like the team's evolved and has supported in everything since, because I'm not good at any of that.
You know what's interesting too is even when it scaled to the point of having consultants and having like neuroscientist advisors and Dr. Tara and Janelle, even though I remember when we found Dr. Tara, we found her, but then we went through the emails and she had reached out to us like months earlier. And we were like, wait, what?
It's how the universe works.
Yeah, it was already in orbit for those people to connect with the brand too.
And it's always been that way, I find. So remember when we were like, we're going to do the deep imaginings, the woman who does the music reached out to you. Like people always present when it's time, because this brand isn't me. Like people, they want to think it's me, and it's not me at all. Like it's not, this brand is, though I'm a conduit and a teacher in this brand and the work has come through me, this brand is here to support thousands and thousands of people. And it's not like I'm the mastermind sitting behind here being like, and we need this and that. And, it's like the people are showing up, like you, like Grace, like Nikki, like the people on our team, they have shown up because you're so divinely here to be a part and facilitate and create and be a creator in that. Again, that gets back to that space of like, we see influencers online who have bought their followers and they have all the fake life really, that they're presenting. And a lot of people get into digital work because of that, but it's not real and it's not panning out for a reason. Like everything about To Be Magnetic has been organic and it's come through the universe. Everything that happens in this brand and flows to the person doing this work has not come through me. It's come through the universe. It's come through the conduits that are meant to be a part of this facilitating, helping, creating. It's not the like Lacy Phillips show. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just very much not that.
That's getting me emotional too, because I think of how many countless moments that I'm like, what is coming through to this brand is so kismet, magical. The stars are aligning in such a way, especially when we go to like develop workshops or DIs or something, the way that things line up and the information is delivered right in front of us exactly when we need it. And then the response from the community, that gets me, because it's like what we're going through and we're like, okay, I think we have this great idea and this and this and this, and you're channeling and I'm like talking to these people and we're putting it all together. But then when it touches people who are experiencing that, the amount of people who are like, I feel like you crafted this for me and you're changing my life, that gets me. It's so much bigger than one thing, one person. We're co-creating with the community.
With the community, 100%. And there are so many times that I'm like, I'm tired. Like, I don't even know if I want to do, and I don't mean that in terms of, meaning maybe I just want to be a mom. Like I go through those moments, and then I'll read a testimonial and I'll be like, dude, what the fuck am I thinking? This is changing thousands of people's lives. But to what you're saying, even on top of that, we always joke about this inside of the brand. Without fail, we are just trying to align schedules. It'll be like every single thing, whether it's a live or an event we're going to have, they'll fall on new moons, full moons, solstices. I could roll my eyes at that. But then again, at the end of the day, there's something bigger controlling that. All of the time, it's something bigger and greater that's facilitating. And I think that people who are really invested in this work, they go, that's what's refreshing about this brand. It's so authentic.
What advice would you give people who maybe just starting the uncovery process of all of their stuff? They come from a chaotic childhood. They're starting to pull apart. They're called to something bigger. They're called to something more connected. What would be step one?
If your consciousness isn't ready and you have deep stuff, have support around you. That's number one. Like even when I was doing it, I've always had to be on my own and take care of myself. So I always knew I'd be okay. But like big stuff can come up and it can be heavy. And it doesn't mean you have to full blown have a therapist if you can't afford it, like I couldn't. It can be a 12-step group. It can be a great friend. Most importantly, it can be an accountability buddy inside of this community who's also going through it too. And who can go like, hey, slow down a little, or pick it up, or I went through that too. This is actually what helped me when I looked from this angle. I'm such a big proponent on having that, like someone you can bounce off to and not feel alone with, who can just really like hold your hand through that experience. That's definitely step one. And then the second would be, or I guess the third, getting into your magic, your witchiness in this, your fun. Like maybe that doesn't appeal to everybody, but if you can start to have fun and make this a practice and a ritual, and it doesn't feel like just another thing you have to race and be perfect at to get what you want. It just won't happen like that. You really have to learn how to listen to your intuition and lean into the nuances, lean into the community when you're stuck, I don't know if this is a test or not. Like get into the app and write inside of the community and say like, hey, this just happened. Do you guys think this is a test? And I can guarantee you many people have been in that exact spot that can be like, let me tell you, you know what I mean? So having fun and making this a community and witchy and just magic. And I know that that's probably just a space I'm really getting back into, but it brings everything to life more, to color more.
Thank you, Lacy. This has been such an incredible episode. Everyone has been asking all these questions forever. And I think hearing it in one spot, it also just kind of reignites and inspires me to be going about my own journey. It feels a deeper connection to the brand, to you. And I think your story is just so inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you. This has been fun to relive in an episode and just feel really connected with the community and you. So I appreciate the space and time.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode as much as we did. And if you're starting to get a feel for this to be magnetic manifestation process, but aren't completely sold yet, let me point you to some of our free offerings. You can check out the expanded podcast episode called How to Manifest Anything You Desire, where Lacy, the founder, and I break down exactly what this process is all about. You can check out The Motivation, which is our testimonial library with thousands of testimonials of people who have manifested wild things using this process. Or you can check out our free mini workshop to find out why you're not manifesting and listen to one of our proprietary deep imagining audios where it's going to help you drop into your theta state and overwrite low self-worth limiting beliefs. Enjoy. We'll see you next week.